me just a little bit to talk about what it means to follow, what it means to know where you're going, and how hard it is to not know where you're going. Today we get to encounter the life of Peter. Peter's an incredible example of somebody, a leader of followers. He's a leader of the 12 disciples. He's somebody who knows where Jesus is going, except when he doesn't. I love relating to Peter because Peter is such an example of faith. He's such a boisterous person. He's such a person who kind of just speaks with emotion. Except that so often Peter gets himself into trouble when he does that. I love relating to Peter because Peter gets himself into trouble with his words and with his actions over and over and over again. So often when we talk about people of faith, we talk about people who we uplift them and we say, wow, they're a great example of faith. I want to be like them. Well, if we want to be like Peter, that gives me great comfort because Peter gets himself into trouble all the time. Peter's one of the first things that happens to Peter is Peter's incredible experience on the sea in which Jesus is walking alongside him. And Peter is frightened at first to see Jesus walking along the water, right? Peter's response boldly in faith is to say, Lord, call me out of the boat, allow me to walk on the water. Peter is bold to step out in faith. And as soon as Peter does that, what does he do? He starts to sink. That's right, Barry. He starts to sink because he gets so concerned and so fearful of everything else that's around him. Peter is bold first in his faith, and then he loses his faith so quickly. Have you ever been there and been bold in faith, and then so quickly to feel that faith? So often, a family camp and Riverside Bible Camp is a great example of this, in which we come home from camp and we are so excited and so jazzed and so full of faith. And then life happens, and it seems like we lose faith so quickly when those things happen. Peter is an example of somebody who is bold in faith, yet continually fails in his faith. Peter confesses in the text right before the text that Sharon read. Peter is bold to say to Jesus, as Jesus says to his disciples, who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Peter says to Jesus, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus' response to Peter is, you are the rock. You are the one on whom I will build my church. What Jesus is saying to Peter is, you're the man. You got it right. And then immediately after Peter's bold confession of faith, what are the next words that Jesus says to him except, get behind me, Satan? You are setting your mind on things of man, not on things that are above. Peter is bold in his faith, yet he fails in his faith. The first words that Jesus speaks to Matthew in the Gospel of Mark chapter 1, are follow me. That's a special call that rabbis would give to their disciples. Follow me, come follow me. The last words that Jesus gives to Peter in the Gospel of John, after Peter has failed, after Peter has denied Jesus 3 times, Jesus says to Peter, follow me, feed my sheep, tend to my lambs. Follow me are the first words that Jesus says to Peter, and the last words that Jesus says to Peter. In spite of Peter's incredible acts of faith and Peter's incredible failures. I relate to Peter well because Peter is like me. Bold to step out in faith some days, and so very miserable at living a life of faith some days. Jesus says to Peter, follow me, lose your life so that you will find it. Take up your cross and follow me. And so often when we think about taking up our cross, we wonder, what does that mean? How can we do that? Should I look for ways to be persecuted for my faith? Should I perhaps become a missionary and give up all of my worldly possessions so that I can serve others? Should I live a monastic lifestyle? And sometimes we're bold in faith to step out and do those things. Except that losing our life to find it is simply putting ourselves behind others. Martin Luther said that anybody that has a co-worker or a spouse or a child or a friend has a cross to bear. Using that language from our gospel today, in which Peter calls us to follow just like he does, to live and to take up a cross, to be rather mundane in our serving, to really think about putting others first. I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible as a father, putting myself behind my children. I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible as a husband, putting myself behind my spouse. I'm terrible at that. Yet that's a call to take up a cross and to live like Jesus calls us, to love God and to love others. To put everything else in perspective means to put ourselves in a following position. Jesus' first words and Jesus' last words to Peter are to follow me. To put yourself behind Jesus and to find ways to put yourself behind others in order so that your life would be a life of discipleship. That's not a fun life, putting yourself behind others. But that's exactly what God calls us to do, to follow in the life and in the ministry of Jesus. To follow me. I'm breathing that a lot. But it felt like I needed to. Let's sing our song of response and cut a couple verses.